Apparently there was new footage today for The Matrix Resurrections and The Batman. Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flix. My name is Chris Wong. First, we're going to talk about Batgirl, then The Batman, and finally, Matrix 4 Resurrections. Alright, let's talk about Batgirl. Now, Batgirl is directed by Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah from a script by Christina Hodson. Now, they just cast Leslie Grace as Batgirl, and they are in talks to have J.K. Simmons return to the role of Jim Gordon, which makes this Batgirl within the DCEU, with Ben Affleck's Batman. Today on their Instagram stories, Adil El Arbi posted that they've finally landed in Gotham City, in which case they are ready to go into production for Batgirl. Now, I think when they say Gotham City, that means they are either in London or Glasgow. But they look pretty excited to go into production, as well as Leslie Grace. She posted this on her Instagram. Now, it looks like it's somebody's birthday here, and the manager of the Batcave, but you can see a certain comic book that he put up there. Yeah, Batgirl Year One. Now, Batgirl Year One is a 9-part comic book miniseries. It tells the story of Barbara Gordon, who is a bright and eager young woman who has already achieved much in her life, but struggles to find her true calling. After graduating college in her teens, Barbara hoped to follow in her father's footsteps and serve as a dedicated officer of the law, but her plans are derailed by her father's overprotectiveness and society's prejudice. This leads Barbara to seize a different path towards her goal and adopt the vigilante persona of Batgirl. As she learns the ropes of the vigilante's lifestyle, she finds herself thrown into conflict with Batman and the crosshairs of aspiring supervillains. And in this case, this story focuses on 2 major villains, Killer Moth and Firefly. What's also interesting is that not only was Jim Gordon in this series, but also Batman and Robin. Like all major movie adaptations of comic book movies, it's almost always different from the comic book. I think only Watchmen got really close to being exactly like the comic book. So I'm still kind of hopeful that Ben Affleck shows up as Batman because he was a part of that Year One story. It wouldn't make sense to have him part of that movie, but for right now, we only know that J.K. Simmons is returning, and crossing our fingers that Ben Affleck will show up as well. Now, speaking of the Bat family, there is another movie called The Batman that's coming out next year. That is Matt Reeves' The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson in the title role. Now, there was a Warner Brothers Cinemacon presentation today, and they didn't show too much stuff, but 2 things stood out for me, and one of them was the Batman. Apparently, they showed a behind-the-scenes featurette and the trailer itself. Now, there was some back-and-forth information on whether that Batman trailer was a new trailer or the original trailer that we saw at DC Fandom. Some people said it was a little bit different. Others have said it's the exact same trailer. And within that featurette, Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves talked about the Batman. This is coming from The Hollywood Reporter. Bruce Wayne walls to ominous piano music. For some reason, Batman has always stood to as one of the major characters of the 20th century, Pattinson says. We see him in the cowl, removing it. He says it is radically different from other Batman movies. Reeves says we haven't seen anything grounding it the way Year One does. It's not an origin story, but it is a Batman in his early days. Footage shows Batman beating up goons, set in red light, explosions, police officers, and dark chaos. He's really working out his rage, Pattinson said. All the fights seem very personal. He uses various weapons to beat down enemies. A shot shows Andy Serkis as Alfred. The Batmobile drives with flames coming from its exhaust. We can't wait for you to see the Batman in theaters next year, Reeves says. Other commentators say that this Batman looks extremely dark and different, almost like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker in terms of tone, which could be really exciting because we don't want a comedy Batman. We want a dark Batman. He literally lives in the dark. I mean, I was already sold on the trailer. I was hoping for the new one, but maybe they're saving that for DC Fandom. Now let's talk about another exciting movie that's coming out this year. Matrix 4 Resurrections, or The Matrix Resurrections, as it has been officially titled at CinemaCon. Even though we already knew that because someone on the set actually leaked that out. Now, there were some behind-the-scenes featurettes for this one, but they actually showed something really cool for this movie. The trailer! Man, I wanted to see the trailer, but I'll tell you what they showed. This is coming from The Hollywood Reporter. The trailer began with Thomas Anderson, played by Keanu Reeves, in therapy, telling his therapist, played by Neil Patrick Harris, "I had dreams that weren't just dreams. Am I crazy?" He senses something that is not quite right with the world, but he has no memory of what the Matrix is. Later, he runs into a woman played by Carrie Ann Moss at a coffee shop. They shake hands, and there seems to be something between them, but neither one remembers the other. Meanwhile, Reeves Thomas spends his days taking prescription blue pills and wondering why everyone in his world is glued to their phones, looking around and realizing he's the only one on a crowded elevator not looking at a device. Eventually, Reeves Thomas runs into a man, played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who is reminiscent of Morpheus, the freedom fighter played by Lawrence Fishburne in the original trilogy. This mysterious man hands Anderson a red pill, and soon we see footage of him with powers, seeing the Matrix for the fake reality that it is. The footage followed some similar beats of the original, including Neo fighting the Morpheus-like figure in a dojo, and an image of Anderson in an incubator. There's also a shot of Neo looking in a mirror and seeing an older version of himself. Neo also seems to have a few new powers from the last time, with the trailer including a shot of what looks like him controlling a missile through telekinesis to prevent it from hitting him. Now, apparently the style and tone of that trailer matched the original trilogy, The Matrix, which is really cool, but with some new visual effects. Now, I'm really excited for Matrix 4 Resurrections. I'm a huge fan for Matrix trilogy. I even played a little bit of that MMORPG game. But it's interesting to see an older Neo here in another Matrix world with an older Trinity. And they're both alive, or at least appear to be. And why is Morpheus younger? Is this in the future, or is it in the past? Or is time not really an issue here because they're in the Matrix? They can look like whatever and whoever. And I certainly can tell that when they're throwing in the dojo scene, it's kind of like they want to hit you with the nostalgia factor, like all these other sequels that have come out, like Ghostbusters or Maverick. But I'm really hoping there's a lot more to tell of this story, and I'm really intrigued where it's going. I'm just gonna say I'm really happy to see Neo back and Trinity. Unfortunately, I guess Lawrence Fishburne couldn't make it, but I'm pretty sure Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is gonna do a fantastic job. But man, why couldn't Warner Bros. Release the trailer? You know, like Sony released the Spider-Man trailer. I mean, it sounded like Matrix 4 Resurrections trailer was a done deal and it looked amazing. I wish we could have seen that. I could understand the Batman trailer because they are saving that for DC fandom. It makes me wonder what else is coming at DC fandom this October.